under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I want to thank everyone for attending. If you could make sure your name is on the sign-in sheet, that'd be appreciated. Anybody who's on Zoom whose name is not apparent, please identify yourself. The first item on our agenda is additions or deletions to the agenda. Anybody have anything they'd like to add or subtract or move around from the agenda?
I have none.
Nope.
Okay, second is approve the minutes from the July 5th, 2024 Select Board meeting. Anybody have any comments, corrections, or would like to approve, make a motion to approve the minutes?
Move to approve the minutes from June 1st, 2024.
Second?
So Tim has made the motion and Ariana seconded. Any changes or edits?
I have none.
Nope.
Nope, I'm good.
I'll then entertain a motion to approve the minutes as presented. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Thank you. Next on our agenda is citizens' comments, and this is an opportunity for anyone who's in the audience to comment on anything that is not on the agenda. Does anybody have anything they'd like to bring to our attention? Mr. Bidgood?
Good evening, Chairman and members of the board. I'd like to request an update on the Bailey Hill Road matter.
Okay.
All right, I can do that. So Peter Farr went in the hospital a week and a half ago, and he just got back, and he was looking at some stuff. He has not been able to get on his feet quite yet.
Okay.
So
Okay.
it's a health thing with Peter.
Yep. Also, thank you. You were also waiting to hear from the attorney, Jim. I'm wondering if in the past 2 weeks you've been able to get a hold of him, and if he has a date on which he's going to submit his report.
So we are waiting on a little bit of information that Peter and Peter Farrar are working on.
Okay.
And then Jim, once we have that, then Jim will issue his opinion.
Okay.
There's a couple things being checked.
Okay, thank you.
You're
Thank you
welcome.
for your patience.
You're welcome.
Any other citizens' comments? Next is old business. Julie, can you take us through that, please?
I can. So the Select Board retreat that we planned has now been scheduled for July 29th from 8 to 3 at the Stone Hearth. The solar field, the NDA for the solar field has now been signed, sent to Greenbacker. I should be receiving they call it a suite of documents, so I should be receiving that sometime in the very near future. They were just pulling it all together to send over. Once I get that, then we can start looking through that and start a true negotiation. They're also going to be drafting a proposed purchase and sale so that we can start the conversation there. So there'll be more coming soon on that, hopefully. I figured it would be a good time to give you both, or to give you all an update on the two FEMA events. The December storm has now been assigned a project manager. The nice thing about the December storm is that it's small enough that we're able to do one project for all damages. So that should move through quickly, a couple $100,000 in damages on that one. And then the July storm, we're plugging along, very slow moving all across the state. But one piece that we have learned, which is good, is that interest that is accruing on the current expense note is actually, we can submit that interest to FEMA using their very complex formula, but we can get the larger portion of that interest reimbursed to us, which is good news. That's a very new change. And let's see, Housing Commission is going to be coming to you guys in August, giving you an update, some things that we're discussing there, and a lot of good work taking place. So they're going to be coming with an update and some thoughts and some things for you guys to start thinking about as far as, like, you know, housing trust funds and those types of things. And then we just talked about Bailey Hill Road, and I don't know if you want me to read this. I gave you guys kind of every couple months, I try to give you an update on where we're at with the many grants that we have. So that is in your memo I don't think I need to read them all, but the only thing I would point out is we have been awarded the Better Back Roads grant for Roach, and the paving in Andover has now actually officially been completed. And then maybe the only other thing I would point is that the Land and Water Conservation Fund is opening up in October. That's a large grant through Department of Forest and Parks, and that doesn't open every year. It opens every few years. It is opening this year. We are pulling some ideas together. It may be a good grant to use to potentially redo the pool house, which in the next few years is going to need significant amount of repair. So we're pulling numbers together. We'll be talking about that, but that may be a good source of funds for the pool house. So that's all I have, Lee.
Any questions on or other old business? Next is the short-term rental ordinance. And you should have received a document with the changes made, the STR ordinance copy, and also an email that has some information from Polly Montgomery from the Vermont Short-Term Rental Association, Vistra, and looking for any comments or thoughts relative to those two documents. Mr. Roper.
I'm going to be thoughtful about this. The email that Polly forwarded was interesting to read, and I think it's always important to take context into account, especially in a situation like this where there are always going to be people on either side of the direction that we're taking, some pro and some con. My feeling about this email from VTSTRA, which is, help me out, Julie,
Vermont Short-Term Rental Association?
Yes.
I think that's correct.
well, their letters are wrong, but okay, if it doesn't add up that way, but good enough, that's who they are, right? They're a trade organization? is
They
that-
are, yes, is my
So they're
understanding.
representing people who rent their homes?
Yep.
Short-term. So from that perspective, I understand that they would be pushing back on some of the ordinance as it's written. My own feeling is that none of the points that are being made here are, while they certainly should be considered and maybe discussed, if you all want to talk about them, that's fine. I think everybody's read it. But I don't see anything here that would give me pause in moving forward with the ordinance as it's currently written, with one possible exception, and that is that it was pointed out that the Department of Fire and Safety and the Department of Tax do not issue licenses and registrations, and I believe the document does refer to licenses. And it seems like, I don't know if that's a sticking point or not, but the Fire and Safety issues some type of a certificate, right? Not a license.
For units of 8 and over.
Right.
Right, or over 8.
But I think the document, the ordinance as it's written, refers to a license. So I don't know if that's an issue legally down the road or not. That's my only sticking point on the ordinance as it's written right now. Sean's here.
We're all good.
Thank you, Sean. I was fading a little.
Preston, can we hear what you think?
Yeah, I think that.
Could you
as-
identify yourself, please? Identify yourself. Thank you.
Preston Bristow, I'm the town planner and zoning administrator, and also the short-term rental registration administrator. I think that the comments that Vista brought up are, for the most part, ones that you're all familiar with. We were aware and discussed before about how there's always the possibility of lawsuits about, and claims that certain things might be arbitrary. That particular item 8 is kind of a boilerplate that Jim Carroll, as an attorney, wanted in there. Just said, proof satisfactory to the town that the operator has obtained and performed all necessary licensing and registrations with the Department of Health and the Department of Fire Safety and the Department of Taxes. The Department of Health, it is true, is not currently regulating short-term rentals. The Department of Taxes generally is working with short-term renters through the host platforms directly, and just take the fees out when the registrations are paid. And then for the Division of Fire Safety, you know, it is true, the Division of Fire Safety does not want to be inspecting every, they just say they don't have the resources to do it, but they do need to inspect those that rent to 8 or more, which we don't have too many of here in Chester, and which I think they've already done. So I guess when it gets down to number 8, I mean, we could quibble with words.
Can I ask
is licensing the right word? But I kind of think it's more of a boilerplate to protect us.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Yeah.
Not meant to express an opinion one way or the other. If this sentence were to stay in the ordinance and there are, in fact, no current licensing or registration requirements, that doesn't matter because it says fulfill any required. So if there are none, then they've fulfilled them. And then if some are added, we've already got it.
And that is often the way that things like this
That's
are
the
written.
clarifying
is to
question.
say that if the state were, say Department of Health, were to decide that they were going to do some inspections, then it's now in here
Then
saying
we
you've
would
got to
say
comply
you
with
have
it.
to go do 'em.
If they don't, then that's proof satisfactory to me that you're in compliance because they don't require anything.
Okay, thank you.
That's kind of what boilerplate language does.
Yep.
Any other thoughts or comments on this?
Hello, Lee. Can you hear me?
Yeah, Ernie, go ahead.
Yeah, I just have a couple of comments. I'm sorry I can't be there in person, but I've been a little under the weather lately. The ordinance as it's written it has some new parts to it, but it is basically almost the same ordinance that we've had in place since 12/21 of 2022. The only parts that were really new that were added, and before this version there were a lot more, is the 1-year waiting time, the registration cap, and then the 2 units, and then some fee changes. And that's about it as far as something new, as opposed to the ordinance that's already been in place for 2 years now. It's been going on and stuff. So it's not like it's all new and it hasn't been out there before. And there has been ways for people to register and to do it legally and start renting out short-term rentals over that time. So when this comes into play, it's not like it's going to change anything drastically. The only thing we had going on when we started the discussion on this was a 6-month moratorium on new registrations, but that has since passed since then. And I just wanted to bring up those facts that a lot of this has been already discussed at length, and we've approved it before in an ordinance that's very similar, and that this ordinance just adds a few stipulations that we feel are important to the town to help regulate this. And like all documents that we have, as far as ordinances go, it's something that can be changed or tweaked in the future as it goes along if we see the need in different areas and stuff. And I just wanted to get that out there.
Thank you, Arnie. Mr. Montgomery, you had a comment to make?
Thank you.
Please let us know who you are.
Ian Montgomery, live on North Street, and we have a hosted Airbnb short-term rental. And I'm going through this list from Julie from the Vermont Short-Term Rental Association, which I think is where you were, and I apologize for being late. The first thing that I wonder if it's not really confusing and daunting to people if you make a regulation that can't be applied. And that has to do with saying that they've performed all necessary licensing and registration with the state of Vermont and all that sort of stuff. If you can't do that, why put it in? Because I think it just makes it more of I don't know, it makes it feel more heavy-handed to put stuff there that would daunt people who are considering doing it. And I would say I would strike all of that. That's my suggestion there. Secondly, and this has to do with the fire safety inspection, and this is a tale of my neighbor who has been a long-term second homeowner here and contributes an awful lot and has for years rented out his house, which has a number of beds. He contacted the then fire marshal, who insisted on a sprinkler system and an alarm that was directly connected to the fire station. Now, if there are no regulations, why would that be stipulated on his inspection? He's since cut the whole size of his Airbnb operation down so that it's 8 beds, and so he fits under the smaller category. But nonetheless, what he received was an unbelievably expensive set of requirements. And I don't, from this, understand that there is anything in the state codes for a short-term rental property owner who's doing this activity in their own home to have to comply with such an onerous set of requirements. Thank you for the moment.
Yeah, the building code refers to NFPA, which is a national code, and that's where all that comes from. So when the fire department inspects, they're going from the NFPA, which is a national code, and that's where all that comes from. And it has not been enforced very well in Vermont for decades.
And it's the state fire marshal, it's not just your fire
Well,
department.
it's a state fire marshal. The state of Vermont uses the federal code. The federal code is what the state fire marshal is inspecting. The code that's there applies to not only short-term rentals, but any rental and any commercial building. So there's no, my short-term rental, we basically had to go down, we had to change windows, and we got to 10. But if we had gone over that, we would have been, sprinkler system when you're on a well gets even really more interesting, and window openings and things like that. So, but I have worked for a forensic insurance company, and we are just starting to touch in Vermont the code that we should have been doing for the last 50 years. We're just getting that kind of enforcement.
That makes sense.
Could you come up to the microphone, sorry?
That makes sense, but it also then should say somewhere that we're going to be following the federal guidelines.
Well, it's the state, you're following the state guidelines, the state is using the federal guidelines. You are following the state guidelines, they've just assumed they've taken NFPA.
You know, I'm hoping that you can be helpful for people who want to get into doing short-term rental, or who may have been already doing it and are unaware of this. If somewhere it can be stated what the requirements are in that sense, that would be enormously helpful, rather than this shooting from the hip kind of thing.
It's like 24 volumes.
Well, I realize it may be an extensive document,
Yeah.
but if you're going to expect people to comply with it, then they need to know at least where to access it. You can't blind them with a regulation that you haven't mentioned before.
Well, to that end, we also can't provide a list, a comprehensive list of everything that has to be followed. I mean, part of that falls on the short-term rental operator to figure out what requirements they need to follow. You know, the document that we're talking about is talking about the Division of Fire Safety. So if you go to them, you would be able to find out that they're the ones who are following the NFPA. So I understand your point,
Well,
but I guess
I'm
what I'm
hoping-
wondering is whether we add something to this document, whether it's going to clarify or make it more muddy.
Well, the reason I'm looking for clarification is because we've just had two houses sell opposite us, and one is being already used for short-term rental, and the other one, they may put it up for rental of the entire house. I'm not quite sure yet, because it's a second home, and they live in New Jersey, and they've been up every weekend working on it and everything, but whether they can come up this regularly or not, I'm not sure. But the point is, I'm hoping that Chester can be a friendly town in terms of helping people understand what's required and what's needed. Am I making sense on all this? It's like,
Yeah, I understand.
you know, we've been enormously successful, and this is just an aside, but it's a congratulation thing. The police department has become officer-friendly. I think that's wonderful. And I'd like to see that spread, and I'm suggesting that this might be an opportunity here to make things a little easier, so that at least some of the basic regulations, in this case, it's the sprinkler system and the direct access to the fire department and all of that, if that could be just, you know, somewhere that it could be summarized, that something like that is expected.
I guess,
Thank
and
you.
I'll talk to the board about this, but thank you, Ian. The issue I see is making this document 100 pages long, referencing 24 volumes, or saying following NFPA guidelines. And I'm not sure that that would be helpful
We can't-
either way. And
We can't prescribe to
we
the.
really can't
We
do that.
can't prescribe to the fire marshal what they're going to do. We can say, you have to do what the fire marshal says, and then the fire marshal can say, we're following these guidelines.
Right, and that's what I'm
We
saying.
can't say, the fire marshal will force you to follow these guidelines, because we don't have that
And
authority.
the fire marshal doesn't charge for the visit. Well,
They do now.
They do now?
Yes, they do. Yep.
Wow, I didn't pay last time.
And D, I mean, the other thing is in D, under D, 1 and 2, it does say if you're over 8 occupants, these are the steps that you have to take. So there is a list here. It doesn't tell you that you're going to have a sprinkler system and all those things, but it does tell you you're going to need confirmation on the sewer, and you're going to need an inspection report from the Division of Fire Safety. So we have stated the 2 steps that are going to be needed if you're over. So that is explained. But NFPA federal rules change, if you ask our fire department, on a almost monthly basis. Yeah.
Could you identify yourself?
Yes. Preston Bristow. I did once already, but I'll do it again. The town planner and zoning administrator and STR coordinator. I did just want to say that I was hired partly with the intent that I would present a friendly presence for the town, and I try very hard to do that. I think with the issue that is being discussed right now, I can, in a friendly way, tell people that if they're renting to 8 and less, it's a self-certification, it's not hard. And I can, in a friendly way, say that if it's more than 8, you will have to get an inspection from the state. And I can't predict what that inspection's going to be. Some people come through that inspection with really very few requirements. And some people come through that inspection and they want their windows replaced, and they want extra doorways, and they want fire escapes and everything else, and so, or sprinklers, and you don't know. And so I just don't see in our bylaw what we could do more than what we've said, which is that if you're under 8, and I also do tell people you can have that inspection, and if you don't like the result, don't rent to more than 8. I mean, it's kind of, that's sort of the way it is.
Thank you.
Just another perspective piece here. One of the key goals of this ordinance is safety. And if there's going to be people renting short-term and staying in a home, it's important, I think, that they are assured that that place is going to be safe in the event of a fire, as safe as it can be. And that's the goal of one of the key goals of this ordinance.
Thank you, Tim. Any other comments, thoughts?
Are we,
So we can vote it, we can vote on it, or we cannot vote on it, we can push it off. I had a couple of minor things that I wanted to add, but it's not necessarily pertinent to whether or not we continue with this.
then I guess the question is, does any information brought to light in the last week change where we are, or are we ready to enact this ordinance? Is that where we are?
Steve Mancuso has his hand up. On
Mr.
Zoom.
Montgomery?
And on Zoom.
If you're going to vote on this, I'd like to just get in this question. In section 4, item G, you talk about the number of lessees, guests, or other persons using a dwelling unit pursuant to the short-term rental lease or other agreement with the operator shall not exceed the approved dwelling unit capacity on the short-term rental registration certificate. So that means I can't invite grandma over if there are already 6 of us in the house, and we can't have dinner together?
Are you renting?
Yes. We have a short-term rental.
Right, but you're renting your own home?
Yeah. No, we're renting, well, it is our own home, yes.
Okay, so
It's
your grandma isn't part of, you're saying your guests. If you have guests in the house.
if we have guests there, and we can
Yeah.
have up to 6 according to the rules,
Yep.
and they want to have some family over,
Mm-hmm.
which is often the case because, for instance, we had people for the Springfield Alumni Day, and they wanted to have friends over for dinner.
Yep.
Now, does this mean that they can't exceed their maximum number of 6 if they have friends over?
I-
That's not
As
the
a
way I read
regular
it.
user of short-term rentals all over the world,
Yeah.
that's how I read it.
Well, I'm afraid I do.
So
But then
I,
you asked how we read it, so I'm
No,
saying,
I mean,
yeah, I read it exactly that way.
I think it's ambiguous.
Okay.
well, it says pursuant to the short-term rental lease or other agreement. So if your grandma's not part of that short-term rental lease or other agreement, then I don't see how that would apply to her. But again, I'm not a lawyer.
I have
just
the misfortune
not-
of having a law degree, but I gave it up when I was 25, so,
Well, I guess the point is that from my perspective, I don't see that as an issue relative to what the hypothetical situation you brought up. But that would probably require someone who has the legal expertise to weigh in.
that's what I'm asking for. I mean, if they want to have a barbecue and have some friends over,
So
you
you'd
know.
like us to include every possible situation?
well, I'm not that, but this, to me, as an owner
Yeah.
who does STR stuff, this seems like they can't have anyone over.
So I think they're talking, when I read dwelling unit, people who are sleeping there, right? If
Yeah.
grandma's coming over for a barbecue, she's not spending the night this refers to beds and number of guests, right?
Yeah.
And it says shall not exceed the approved dwelling unit capacity on the short-term rental registration certificate.
Right, I mean, my hope is that this could be clarified, because if I misread it, or misread your intention, that doesn't mean that I can't be wrong, but it does mean that I'm confused. And it's not only to help people understand, but to help people not to misunderstand.
I would suggest that those people are going to be talking with Preston, our friend, our
No.
friendly face of,
The fire
short-term
department
rentals?
had stated what the capacity of the dwelling is. We do not want to change the capacity that the fire marshal has stated.
so does that mean that's the number of people that can be in that
That's the
building?
number of people that can be in the building. It's how many people can you have in here without an access? See, that gets down to, you don't want to be the one who says, yeah, you can have 25 friends over. That isn't, we do not want to be the people who say that.
So, Peter, just to clarify your statement, you're saying that people who are just coming for a short-term visit, not staying overnight, that would be a limit?
I would not touch that with a 10-foot pole. I would say that what it says here is what it says here, because once you're saying the capacity can change of the dwelling, it doesn't matter whether they're sleeping or is the stairway wide enough, or the doors wide enough.
But this is referring to the short-term rental registration certificate.
Right.
With
so it
the
really comes
capacity
down-
number,
The approved dwelling unit capacity.
oh, yep, that's different.
And the capacity is not defined for any of our short-term rentals.
For any,
For any of the houses, for that matter.
Well,
But
that's
just
where I think
sleeping
it comes back
capacity.
to the sleeping. So
Sleeping
if
capacity.
you have under 8 beds, then you're self-certifying. If
Right.
you're 8 beds or more, so I think it comes back to the beds. I think what it's saying is if you are certified for up to 7 people, because 8 triggers the state.
Right.
Then you can have 7 people sleeping in that unit.
Right.
And
I
that's
just-
all it's regulated.
I'm just
think that's
asking
what that says.
for some,
that's all we're regulating.
I'm asking for clarity about that as opposed to having people over. I mean,
I didn't mean, I wasn't meaning to be snarky when I say I stay in Airbnbs almost every month, all
Yeah.
over the country. And I constantly see this in every state, in every country. And it says to me as a customer, this Airbnb accepts 4 people, you cannot exceed that number, period.
for sleeping.
It doesn't say for sleeping, it doesn't say anything to me as a guest. It says this Airbnb can support 4 people, period, no more. So that's my
Then
only
you're
comment is to
interpreting it the
represent-
way I believe it can be interpreted.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
And so I'm having an issue with that.
I hear you. I acknowledge
And I would
that.
like clarity that this refers to the number of people who can sleep there, rather than the number of people that have to do with capacity, which is the word you used.
Yeah.
Are you,
Well, I think you should ask the fire department, is what
Yeah.
I think. You should call the Department of Public Safety and you should ask this question.
Or the
That is not a
platforms you're
question that
registered
we
with.
should be answering.
Or the platforms you're registered with. Like, I don't know what the Airbnb or VRBO or whatever policy is on it, but I know I see it blatant, bold letters, whether I'm in California, Michigan, England, Germany. 4 people in this place, no more, period.
right, you see, and I don't want us to say that.
I hear you.
But I hear
understand.
this
I understand.
potentially saying that, and I believe you've got a confusion of understanding, misunderstanding, that could be clarified if at this point you just simply say that this is no more people sleeping over than the number of beds that are allowed in the registration.
So I guess the question that I have is, if you are operating a short-term rental and you have an agreement that says, or a certification that says, we will host up to 8 people, and you have other people out over for a visit or whatever, then to me, that's on you as far as whether or not you are meeting your obligations under that understanding, the certification that you have. So if you have 8 people staying at your place and then grandma comes over, then all of a sudden you're over that number. That's, I guess I'm just saying that I don't know that we can regulate everything for every hypothetical. I think Ariana said that. I think we need to put in here the language that maybe clarify this a little bit, but I'm not sure that we're going to be able to
But I think you
consider
can.
every option that's out there.
But what has apparently occurred is that Ariana and I agree
Oh,
that
no.
this, no?
No.
No?
I agree that what it says is you can't have more than the number of people on your thing. I agree that that's what it says. I
Right.
haven't said yet whether I think that's the right
No, no,
thing to
and you
say.
see,
I haven't said my
I'm
opinion at
agreeing with
all.
you because I believe that's what it
Yeah.
says to me.
Yeah.
But having listened to the others in this discussion, it seems to me that that is not a common point of view.
So it's hard for me to, I'm a stickler for language too. Ian, I
Thank you.
think it's important that things are clear. That said, I think the context is also very important to take into account. And so it's hard for me to see a scenario where someone would be reported because they rented their place to 7, and the 7 had some family over for a picnic or a cookout or a dinner, and someone says, hey, you're in violation of Section C,
Well,
whatever, right? And so then what's going to, let's just try to be realistic about this. What would happen if somebody, in what scenario would someone report that to the town and say, hey, they're in violation? And then what would Preston, it would come to Preston. What would Preston do about it?
well, what you would do about it is one thing, but I know a whole bunch of people, and this is from my church life, and we call them sticky beaks. They like to poke their nose into other people's business and make problems. And frankly, we've had enough prejudice against short-term rentals in this town that I think people are quite capable of doing that. I'm sorry, but this is...
May I
and
respond?
particularly in our neighborhood where,
Yes.
you know, we have houses that sell for quite a lot of money in places. And people are saying, oh, we want them only to have families in there and all of that. And I understand the need and the desire to have that. But to start spreading abroad things saying, oh, these people are just going to do this and just going to do that, or they're going to do this, and gosh, they're doing that and I can report them. I've seen that too often. And I believe we need clarity of the language.
Then the question is, what do we want to say with the language? Because we have not, any of us, said whether we think it should be interpreted as number of people sleeping or number of people visiting.
Then I would hope that I've raised a necessary issue that needs some further discussion.
And I think I'd also like to take a moment. We have heard from a number of citizens over the last year from both sides. So you have expressed your concerns very eloquently and very well. We have heard equally passionate citizen comment about the fear of parties, the fear of large groups out of control. So this comment, this note, this specific item that we're discussing has another side to it, which is if we have an ordinance that says if you have 7 people, you can only have 7 people, and there's 25 people in a keg, that's a problem for other portions of our community. So respectfully,
I'm not
there are
looking-
many opinions.
I'm hoping that you could find a way to deal with that particular, what I will call, party issue, as
This is one of
opposed
the
to...
ways.
Sorry?
This is one of the ways.
Right, but you see, I think that is unbelievable. I mean, we rent an Airbnb in Los Angeles
Yeah.
when we visit our daughter, and so that there's 4 of them coming over. It's got 1 double bed, so under the definition, by inviting the whole family over and grandkids and whatever, we're violating the rules, and someone could report the owner of the Airbnb.
Have you read your Airbnb agreement for your place in Los Angeles? It's entirely possible you're simply violating the rules. That's all.
I would like these rules to be, again, more clear.
There we go.
And if you're going to state that, I will absolutely call for a revision or whatever it is for this whole thing to be revisited.
Great.
I'm sorry, but
No, no,
but
I'm just-
I just think at some point you've got to be reasonable. And reasonable would come from actually having a capacity.
Well, then you're going to another, so in other words, what we should state in this is that there is a dwelling number that you have to have over 8. Once you reach over 8, you will ask the fire marshal to inspect again for capacity. You
We
just
can,
state
we
there, done.
cannot, we are not licensed to develop capacity in any building.
Right.
Commercial, residential, we are not a team of engineers, and we do not have them on staff. We do not enforce building code in this town. So that is a huge liability to the town and something that I personally, as town manager, would never support.
Right.
That would get us sued very quickly, Ian.
Well,
Very quickly.
I.
We're not licensed to do
I
that.
think if we're going to do something like this regulation, then we need to have the clarity as to what it actually means.
We can maybe clarify language, but we cannot put capacity numbers on things. That just simply can't happen.
All right.
Yeah.
But,
Right.
there's a
Just
world of
can't.
difference between, again, having people over for dinner or having the family over because you're coming down here and staying with us to visit, as opposed to having 25
party.
people in a keg.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
That-
it's
that I
against.
agree with.
That second part is what is regulated against by both VRBO and Airbnb.
Great. How do they regulate? What is the language they use to regulate?
They just
against it?
say, no rowdy parties or something like that. I think that's,
Oh, yeah, it's very strongly stated.
it's strongly stated.
Okay.
You get in trouble.
Well, I'm going to make a recommendation, thank you, Ian.
Thank you.
That if you have language in an agreement, VRBO or Airbnb, that you could send to us, that we can consider and look at, because I'm not familiar with that, maybe you know, Ariana.
No, like I said, typically it says in every single time I sign up, and I can pull it up, the capacity is X. You cannot, no guests beyond that number.
Capacity is X or sleeping is
Right,
X?
fine.
You're going to
So-
find when the fire marshal looks at that, he's going to talk about capacity. Because there's a friend of mine that's been through this because they're having trouble with satyrs in the town that he's in.
So if it's under 8, then it doesn't go to the fire marshal. How are you determining capacity? So that's
We're
saying
not.
that everything
We're-
has to
you
go to the fire marshal.
self-certified. You self-certified.
So that's one way it could, yeah.
You self-certified.
You self-certify your
Right.
capacity, not just your sleeping capacity.
Right,
So,
That could be a way to do it, as long as the town is not certifying it.
right. And it's not us, no.
Anthony,
Excuse me. Both Steve Mancuso and Robert Need have their hands up.
Yeah,
Can I
we're,
make a
we're getting
quick-
to them after Ariana's done.
quick clarification. So upon looking at my last 3 and next 2 Airbnb rentals, each one says 2 guests maximum, but that is information submitted by the host. So if I'm staying in these examples are all unhosted, Los Angeles, Chicago, Toronto, as examples, 1 bedroom with a queen bed. And every one of them says, under house rules, 2 guests maximum. So it doesn't specify sleeping, and I recognize now this is not an Airbnb rule. These are the rules posted by the hosts. So to be clear, it may not have been a regulation from Airbnb, just that I see that every single time under house rules, as far as guest number maximum.
Thank
So,
you.
There we go.
Steve Mancuso, you have your hand up. Would you like to make a comment? Steve? While we're waiting for Steve, Robert, you would like to make a comment?
Yes, very quick. Thank you. First, I just wanted to say that I'm really impressed by the board, by Preston, by Julie, clarifying some of these questions and making it very clear as to what's behind the regulation. I think the board in general has been very reasonable about this and very careful about not interfering with someone's business. But when we get into these hypothetical scenarios about if personal family is there at the same time, that kind of thing, I think we lose sight of a very important point, which is a short-term rental is a business. And these regulations, these proposed regulations, are intended to regulate a business. And I think we can't lose track of that, and we can't blurry it by saying, what if I have a family reunion at the same time kind of thing? Because we're not talking about that. We're talking about the business and how it operates. And I think if you decide to have a short-term rental, if you decide to get into that business, it may not always be convenient for your personal life, but it is nevertheless a business, and it's subject to regulation. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Steve Mancuso, are you back with us? Okay, we'll come back. Steve, just let us know if you would like to make your point. Anyone else have any comments or suggestions or things they'd like to discuss regarding this? So I had two things that I wanted to just bring up under Article C, point 4. This is Section 4, Section C, 4C, 4. We're talking about property owners who do not live in Windsor or Wyndham County. I would like to add in the state of Vermont, just to be clear. And then the other thing, again, this is the editor and me coming out, but we have number of places where we have a number spelled out with parentheses and the numeral in there, and other places where we don't. So I personally am not a big fan of the two number things, but we should at least be consistent. And again, that's not anything that I would spend a lot of time changing, but my personal preference. And that's specifically in Section 5, A, B, and C.
So,
But I think at this point, go ahead, Tim.
no, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think at this point, we have some more homework that we need to do. So I don't know, unless somebody objects, I don't think we're going to be voting on this tonight.
I was hoping we would vote on it tonight. It's been a long road to get here. I think it's an important ordinance, and I think we could nitpick it forever, and someone might still come up with some minor objection. I think the things that are being discussed here tonight, while not meaningless, are in the big picture, are really not going to impact the reality of enforcing this ordinance, of enacting and enforcing this ordinance. And I, for one, would like to see it go to vote tonight.
Make,
Go ahead, Arnie.
yeah, I just want to echo what Tim just said about the ordinance and about how far we've gone with this and all the work that's gone into this. And though, Lee, I agree with those little changes on there too with the numbers. I don't think you should hold back on this. And that being said, I would make a motion that we approve this ordinance tonight as written. And if somebody seconds it, we can take a vote on it.
I'll second.
So we have a motion by Arnie and a second by Tim Roper to approve the short-term rental ordinance copy as we have, or the short-term rental as presented to us. Any discussion, comments?
Yeah, let's amend it and put Vermont in. Shall we?
Yeah.
Because that's not as it's written. So I would amend this to put Vermont in it.
Any other comments?
Can we amend it and vote on it as amended?
You would have to, Arnie, you'd have to change your motion to accept the amendment, and Tim, you'd have to make the second.
I accept the change and the amendment to the motion, as Peter stated.
Okay,
I'll second that.
okay. Any other comments or questions? Ariana?
Are we confident that we're not opening ourselves up to legal action?
Well, most of the comments that were made tonight were about the existing ordinance.
What are you thinking of specifically, Ariana? Is there a subject within this specifically that you're worried about for legal action?
So when you think about it, people who say they want to object to this, the only thing they can object to are the changes in the ordinance. They can't object to the previous ordinance because it's already been in place, and it's been in place for more than the 60 days.
Well, except when you modify an ordinance, you are opening the whole thing back up for discussion.
You are opening the
You
whole
are.
ordinance back up?
You are. You're opening it up for modifications. I mean, I wouldn't, well, I'll just leave it there. But was there something, Ariana, specifically that you were worried about from the legal component? Maybe Preston and I can answer that if it's.
No, I guess Preston's
Any-
response to what's been shared with us is sufficient?
Any municipal ordinance can lead the town to legal action.
Okay.
I mean, Jim has weighed in pretty heavily, and I think we've considered everything that he has said. Preston, correct? I mean, there's a couple things you...
Microphone, no, Jim is
Can you
reviewed.
identify yourself, please?
Jim reviewed the first ordinance at least twice, and the second ordinance, the one you're considering, at least twice. So, I mean, within reasonable limits, there's been that due diligence.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, I'm going to take off my vice chair hat for a minute and just speak as a member of the board. I know that we've spent a lot of time on this, and we've put a lot of effort into it. We've listened to a lot of passionate people talking about this particular issue. And, Arnie and I had a conversation before regarding the original ordinance and when it was put into place and what the intention was. And the fact that this has been in place for almost 2 years now and that we are tweaking it, to me, it seems a little bit hasty to say, we've spent the last year and a half talking about this and we can't wait for another couple of weeks or months or whatever to fix some of the minor issues that have been raised. So in my opinion, I'm not sure what the problem is that we're trying to solve other than the point that Mr. Montgomery brought up and you raised relative to the occupancy or the number of people who could be in a location at once and whether that addresses the party and keg, and that's the thing that concerns me is, do we need to do something to fix that problem? And I think the answer is yes, but I also see the limitations related to having renters coming and wanting to have family over. And so from that standpoint, I think that there's a little bit of clarification would be worthwhile in that respect. So I'm not totally against voting for this, but on the other hand, I'm not sure that tonight needs to happen. It needs to happen tonight in order for us to fix the problem that we're trying to solve here. My 2 cents. So Steve is back on. Can I get his input? Or
Yeah.
are we, okay.
You're still
Mr.
taking-
Mancuso, if you'd like to speak, now's your opportunity.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, I learned how to use a computer. Okay. Look, I'm a tradesman of tenure, and I want to back up a few here because I have to live the NFPA every day. And I know you're listening, Arnie, and you've got even more time on me. That's the bottom line that I'm hearing here. If you really have to consider that almost everything I do has the specter of liability hovering over your head when you operate in terms of applying to the NFPA, whatever their extensive library. If you're a tradesman in this town, that's just over your shoulder wherever you go. So, I would highly recommend that as a municipality you defer to the NFPA and just leave it at that instead of taking on special rules and being a target for that liability as a municipality. Thank you very much for your time, guys. Carry on.
Thank you, Steve. Any other thoughts or comments?
Yeah, Lee, I have one more
Go ahead, Arnie.
That item that we're trying to address regarding guests and regarding capacity, I've stayed at a lot of B&Bs also, and it's always the agreement between the people that are renting and the person that owns the house, whether he allows guests, how many guests, and how that works. There's been some where we've asked directly and we were refused, and other ones where they told us how many we could have. Those type of small issues that come up are usually discussed between the people renting and the renter. You're not going to be able to fit everything in an ordinance that you want to have covered and clarified in a document, in a town ordinance like that. It's almost impossible. I think we're covering what we should be covering, and we're doing it responsibly, and we're doing it thorough. We can keep going on this, and I guarantee you that in 2 weeks from now or a month from now, there'll be some other issue that might pop up, that might show up. I think we've taken this a little too far. I think we've overanalyzed it to the point where, to the point where it's not accomplishing anything. I think it's time to put this to bed, and it's time to vote on it and see what happens. There is also a process afterwards that happens, that if people disagree with this and there's a big upswell, that they have 30 days to petition the vote to have it not pass, and then the process starts in a different way after that. So those are my final thoughts on that. Thank you. I got to mute it because my dog's going to attack in a minute. Sorry.
Thank you, Arnie. Ariana?
I have a surprise question for everybody, I bet, at this point. If we are considering moving forward, and it feels like we are, then I would like to consider Mr. Montgomery's request, because I don't disagree about the ambiguity or possible misinterpretation of what's in here. Agreeing that in my anecdotal experience, any question of occupancy beyond that number is between me and the host, as you said. And out of respect for the fact that the fire NFPA is going to regulate anything over 8, I do wonder if we want to consider the word sleep or overnight in any way in the item that Mr. Montgomery has brought to our attention, which I've now suddenly lost track of what number it is.
It's section 4G.
4G. The number of lessees, guests, or other persons using a dwelling unit pursuant to the short-term rental lease or other agreement with the operator shall not exceed the approval dwelling unit capacity
Sleeping capacity?
for sleeping on the short-term rental registration certificate. Is there an appetite to consider that?
Not unless Jim reviewed it.
Okay.
Dwelling is probably a specific word that it's there for a legal purpose.
Could we add overnight in front of lessees? The number of overnight lessees?
Well, actually,
guests?
after lessees. So lessees, comma, overnight guests.
So isn't the
no.
lessee, wouldn't that be the,
Yeah, you're right.
You could say number of lessees, guests, or other persons overnighting in a dwelling unit.
yeah, is that even
But I
a
get the
word?
sense
I don't
that, I get the sense
make
that
up
we
our
would
own.
still want to go through Jim if,
Yeah.
Preston, has this been discussed in any capacity with Jim and you about defining the word a dwelling? Or capacity of the dwelling capacity of
There's a definition of dwelling unit.
Yeah, there is a definition under section 3D.
I don't recall discussing that with Jim Carroll.
Thank you.
I have always assumed that dwelling capacity is overnight, but I can also say that the partying is a big issue. In some districts, we haven't had it here.
Actually, if we just scroll up, for those of us with our laptops, and you look at section 4B, a simple 4 lines up, the dwelling unit capacity of a short-term rental shall be a maximum of 2 occupants for every bedroom plus an additional 2 occupants. By extension or extrapolation, have we therefore defined dwelling unit capacity as bed capacity?
Yep.
Good point.
Right there in number B.
Yeah.
Does that feel more comfortable if it's already defined 2 sentences above?
Yeah. Malcolm seems comfortable.
I mean, I was involved in Killington with a rollout of their short-term rental and here, and that's what I've always thought, is that the occupancy is tied to the beds, and so it does seem like that's overnight.
It seems the intent is there.
Yeah. Do you guys, I don't know if you have this in front of you or not. I don't know if you have the benefit of the document. So section 4B
Yeah, that makes sense.
actually defines it for us. And then it's referenced again in section 4G.
For the recording secretary, that was Polly Montgomery saying, yes, that makes sense.
Have I created any other conflict by trying to make this clarification, gentlemen?
Not in my mind.
I think it resolves it.
Peter?
Okay.
Oh, I'm there's too much trouble with me being done forensic investigation. I am totally going to abstain.
Okay.
There's too much liability. Once you start trying to redefine a definition that's in NFPA, I wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole.
I don't
So-
think you need to redefine. I think you're covered.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The policy has you
That's
covered.
yeah, I think,
We're not changing it. We're not changing anything in here.
Except adding the word Vermont after Windsor or Windsor.
Right.
So it's
Wyndham and Windsor
as
County.
approved by Jim already.
So what happens, so you get to 8, so you have a unit capacity of 8. So once you get to 8 or more,
no, more than 8.
once you get to more than 8, then you're saying what?
That it's up to the state fire marshal,
Right. As long as you stay
Period.
with Dale.
Yep.
period.
Yep, period.
That's not changing.
Right.
Nothing, actually, none of it's changing other than
Right,
state of
there.
Illinois.
Yeah.
Yep.
The ordinance already covers the issue.
Right.
So let's see if we can't take it another step forward after 1.5
Oh, no,
back.
let's not.
So under Section 4C4, property owners who do not live within Windsor or Wyndham County, Vermont, we'll add the word Vermont, shall designate and provide the name and contact information of a designated agent located in Windsor or Wyndham counties, Vermont. So it needs to go in there twice, it looks like.
Yep.
And if we can approve this based upon making that, if we can vote on it with that addition, then I would say let's go ahead and vote. And then what, we just have to retype it, Julie, and for
Yep,
signature?
you can either sign this and trust that I will change the word, or I can change the word and y'all can come in Friday.
Can we
whichever.
just like insert it in there and
It
ink?
is.
Yeah,
It is
okay.
now, and then I will just.
Okay, she's already
We will
added
type it in.
So,
but,
okay.
Yeah. either
Then
or
I
press
would
it.
like to go ahead and vote if everybody else is ready for that.
Any other comments? All right, I'll take a vote. All in favor of the short-term rental ordinance as amended, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Appears to have passed. Arnie, did you vote? I didn't hear you.
Voted yes.
Okay.
Everyone voted yes, correct?
Yes. Next on the agenda is the nuisance ordinance. Direct your attention to that document. So we have actually two versions of this. One is a Word document that was sent to us today, edited today, I'm assuming?
I think I sent it to you yesterday.
Oh, it's dated today. But regardless, anybody have any thoughts or comments on the revised nuisance ordinance?
So I think Tim had a couple of things.
Yep,
Yeah.
so there were a couple typos that Julie already took care of, she told me. And then there was a comment, at least on my copy, I'm not sure who put the comment in, let me see if I can get us there. Section 3, paragraph F, there was a question, do we want to include electric collars?
Right.
And
I
Mike-
inserted that.
And Mike, you inserted that, okay. So my comment is, I don't think we need to do that because the e-collars that Peter brought up last time we discussed this are more like a GIS fence. I think that's actually what it's called, is a GIS fencing with an electronic collar. and that would be covered under section 3I1.
So I've often walked my dog and used a shock collar.
That's different than what you talked about with the sheep.
Well,
though.
no, but here you're talking a lead. So would so if you're using a collar to control your dog as you walk your dog, you're saying that that is a loose
Then your
animal.
dog wouldn't be running at large if you had control of it.
But that's not what it says here. That's why you defined what the lead was.
I would recommend that we add some language that says, is usually attached to a halter or has other means of control by the owner.
Yep. I'm good
Or-
with that.
Yeah, that would work.
Yep.
Well, it's not necessarily a
dogs,
dog.
But this is domestic animal,
If
this
you're
is any
walk-
kind of
if
a
you're walking
domesticated
your
You're
animal.
sheep.
walking your horse.
So what were you, can you repeat what you said, Lee?
I don't know. Under 3F,
Okay,
lead is also known as a lead line, lead rope, or head rope, collar rope, is used to guide or direct a domestic animal and is usually attached to a halter. I would suggest adding something like, or the animal is under other means of control by the, I was going to say owner, but I don't know that it needs to be owner.
Is that actually a thing, though? Do people walk domestic animals with training collars on? I mean, dogs, yes.
My next door neighbor all the time.
Walks what?
They walk hunting dogs with it, and they certainly do, there's weird things that are going on. You're just better to make it broad.
We're going to start talking about weird things.
Well,
We
there you
gotta-
go. So you just make it broad to cover it.
So the question is, running at large is defined in a way that it could include electronic collars because it says otherwise under owner's physical control.
right.
So the question is, do we just take that exact phrase?
That's all
No,
you need.
because it's not about defining a lead.
That's all you need, though. If it's otherwise under the owner's physical control, then that would include an electric collar.
Exactly.
Right, so do we need to
need
name an
to-
electric device as a potential lead
Under F.
under F? Is the same question.
I don't think so.
I think,
Or
I
do you even need
agree.
to- Well, the thing is, do you even need to have F? If it's under running at large means.
Yeah, you're covered there. You don't need to add it anywhere else.
Right.
Right,
But you
but,
do need to define lead.
but lead
for the
is
legal
used
document.
elsewhere, yeah.
So lead has to be defined. I don't think it needs to have the electronic device unless you want to use the technology phrasing nowadays, which is current or yet to be invented technology to lead an animal.
You hang around with lawyers a lot?
I agree. I don't think we need to change that
Yeah.
because we're defining lead. And electric collar is not necessarily a lead.
But we are saying an electric collar is sufficient to say something, an animal is not running at large.
Right.
Correct. Yeah,
Right.
I think you're fine.
So I want to go back to section 3A, definitions, domesticated animal means. I'm not sure why we have chukar, partridge, cotornix, quail, stain, whatever it is. I mean, it seems like we're just throwing these things in there for no apparent reason
I
to
think that
Chester.
I think that comes from statute.
I-
I think that's.
Does that come from
I think
statute, or
that
is
that
that
comes-
just from-
This
I think that
list is
comes from
specific.
ag rules and stuff, like,
Yeah.
this is a VLCT model policy. That's coming from law somewhere.
I think it also sets a tone that basically any damn animal that you can think of is covered here.
Well, and I brought that up at our last meeting when we discussed this, that why limit it to these?
And that's why you added including but not limited
Right,
to.
but I
Yeah.
know, I understand that, but that's why I'm saying including but not limited to would also include chukar, partridge, blah, blah, if we didn't list them. So I don't care either way, it just seems a little odd to me.
I see what you're saying.
As in, after swine, poultry, then just write birds?
Well, I was going to nitpick peacocks because that only refers to the male bird, so it really should be peafowl. But I don't think the hens make much noise, so maybe it doesn't matter.
Right. And there should also be a comma after that.
Ooh, we can have an ostrich.
Lee is apparently
I'm in.
Lee is about to adopt himself as the official policy writer for the town of Chester.
Okay, moving right along.
Yeah, good
So,
idea.
did you have another one, Lee? Because
Well, for that
No,
matter, we don't
go
have a
ahead.
parenthetical.
let's see, where was I? I think it's section
And volleyball flags, we
5.
have a lot of those.
Let me find my paragraph. Section 6, paragraph H, says the enforcement officer may only impose the temporary or permanent forfeiture of a domesticated animal and/or the right to keep a domesticated animal on their property in town as a remedial action if its owner has violated the provisions of this ordinance 3 times. But then when you go down to 7A1, grounds for impoundment. Any domesticated animal may be immediately impounded if the animal is found running at large. So those two things are contradictory, and I'm not sure which one should be changed. I think maybe if we just eliminated the word only
I think
from-
forfeiture and impoundment are two different things.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
very- Yep.
Yep.
Okay.
It's the
They
difference
are.
between forfeiture
An impoundment.
and impoundment.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I think that was all I had, other than some typos and spelling things. And Julie already got those.
Arnie, you got any comments on this? Anybody else have any comments on this?
Yes. Do we risk misinterpretation when it says running at large in town? Does the word
Where are
town define something? Should it just say a domesticated
What paragraph
animal
are you?
running at large?
Section 4B.
Section 4B. I don't want to take us back to a foundational discussion, but I do know we don't want this ordinance interpreted as just being village or just being rural
Well,
or
it's the
anything.
town
So,
of Chester.
great, so running at
town.
large in
The town
Chester.
of Chester.
How about
The
just
town of
in
Chester.
Chester?
Or in the town.
Because I
Town
don't
of
think,
Chester.
town isn't even a designated neighborhood, but I just don't want to risk it being,
I think you just say in the town of Chester.
great, thank you. That was my only one. And now it's going to make me crazy. Preston, do we have any area called, quote, town? Or are we just village?
We are the town of Chester. That is our legal name, is
Perfect.
town of Chester. Right.
Perfect, correct. Thank you. Then I have no concerns.
So what's the pleasure of the board? Do we want to see the final copy of this?
Yeah, I would like to
Yes,
see
done
it.
it.
Yes, okay, absolutely.
This needs to be cleaned up.
Excellent. Any other thoughts, comments? Anybody in the room or on Zoom land? Hearing none, we will move on to the next agenda item, which is setting the tax rate. Julie, you want to walk us through that when you get a second?
Sure. So the setting the tax rate is a little bit different this year, given that our education budget was approved later than normal. And the fact that I am going to be gone in several weeks in July. We want to get the bills out as soon as we possibly can. So what I am hoping is that this year you will vote the municipal budget. That's the only number that you can actually vote anyways, is the municipal budget. And then so that as soon as we get that education rate, I don't need to then call a meeting of the board. We can just get tax bills out. That's the plan. Normally, what would happen is we get the education rates from the state, I give them to you all at once, and then you vote the municipal rate when, that's just the way we've always done it. It doesn't have to be done that way. This year, I'm just hoping to get the municipal rate set so that as soon as we get those education rates, we can just get the bills out the door because we are running low on cash. So I want the bills out as soon as we can possibly get them out.
Excuse me, sir, I'm going to turn the lights on.
Yeah, oh yeah. It's getting darker.
So based on your manager memo, the net budget of $3,976,000 plus the voted articles of $39,811 for the grand list, results in the grand, divided by the grand list.
Yeah, results in a tax rate of,
Gives us a municipal tax rate of 0.9870 per thousand, hundred,
per hundred.
per hundred.
And that's up 6 cents, which is what we anticipated when we set the budget. Yep.
for all the reasons we talked about.
Yep, that is correct.
So is this going to cause hardship for residents of Chester to have two bills and one coming earlier in the year than it normally?
So that's not happening this time.
So this will be,
No, that note is that, I said, at a future meeting, we're going to be presenting an idea. That's not affecting
okay.
this. No, the bills are going out the way they always do.
Okay.
Yeah. That is
Okay.
a future meeting, just a breadcrumb that I'm dropping in your ear at the time.
excellent, thank you for that clarification.
Not happening now. No.
Okay,
No,
so we need to vote on this?
You do need to vote. There needs to be a motion to set your
Okay,
municipal
so I will
rate.
accept the motion to set the tax rate for
2024?
the upcoming tax season.
So moved.
Second.
So Ariana made the motion and Peter seconded it, and this is for a municipal tax rate of 0.9870 dollars, I'm assuming,
Yep,
so 98.7 cents.
98 cents, yeah.
Yep. Per $100 of assessed value. Any comments, questions, discussion? Hearing none, I will ask for a vote. All in favor of setting the tax rate of the municipal tax rate at .9870, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Next item is liquor license entertainment permit. We have two. One is a second-class permit from Dollar General and a second-class permit from Smitty's Chester Market. And so this is a simple signing the document.
Nope, it's a motion because you don't sign them.
Oh, okay. So I'll accept the motion to accept the second-class license application for Dollar General and Smitty's General Store.
I move that we accept the application for both the Dollar General Store and Smitty's.
Second.
So Ariana made the motion and Tim Roper made the second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Next would be the cemetery deeds. So we have a couple of cemetery deeds. Nancy and Ronald Shute.
Just one.
Oh, that's just the one. So this is a signature. I'll sign and pass down. Why do I have this document? I don't want to have it.
Because when you guys were talking about the nuisance ordinance at the last meeting, you wanted to see some language. That's the document that regulates that language
Oh, okay.
with your peacocks and
Okay.
water buffalo in Vermont,
Well, I
apparently
have
we
to
have a lot of them.
read
So-
47 page.
Yeah, exactly. You wanted to know the language at the last meeting, I gave it to you.
Thank you.
There used to be some bison up in Townsend, too.
I was
We
going to
left
say the
that
water
off.
buffalo that made it into statute is interesting. Okay.
Bison tastes good. All right.
Yeah, it's just-
Next is new business, next agenda. So it looks like we have the water meter presentation on July 3rd and a Class 4 roads discussion.
Yep, hopefully
Anything
we'll
else?
have some answers for Mr. Goodgood and other Class 4 roads. I'm hoping will be on the July 3rd, it's going to depend. The nuisance ordinance we'll add on there. And then August 7th, the Housing Commission, I'm hoping will present. That may get pushed to the second meeting in August, we'll see. And then quarterly financials.
Excellent.
The other new piece of business, I will let you know, we received in the mail, I think it was yesterday, an official 2024 reappraisal order. It's not a surprise. We knew it would be coming. Our CLA is at 78.09%, and our coefficient of dispersion, the COD, is the driver of the reappraisal, is at 21.67. So as soon as that number gets above 20%, it's an automatic order for reappraisal, which is not, this is not a surprise.
And
We
essentially-
knew this was coming.
Essentially, that means in the current real estate market, Chester properties are undervalued by the town's assessment by 20% or more.
Basically, yes.
Okay.
Yes. What has to happen, so the next steps are, I'm going to sign this document, and I'm going to send it back, that basically says, we have received this, we understand that we now need to develop a reappraisal plan. Kathy is working, and Kathy and I are talking about a number of things, but we do not feel that there needs to be a full townwide reappraisal. We are hoping that what will happen is the cost tables that come into the NEMRIC system are being adjusted. Every town in the state is in the same boat, by the way. So if the cost tables can be adjusted based on everybody's relatively close CLA at this point, then there may just be an issue of some formulas, and we don't necessarily have to do a full reevaluation of the town, which would be assessors going out looking at 1,900 parcels and
Expensive.
exactly, and very time consuming. So we do not have to submit our reappraisal plan until I think it's November 15th. We have 100 and whatever days. So we will, by then, have a better understanding on what kind of reappraisal we have to do, how we address this CLA. And so we'll be developing that plan. Obviously, you guys will be a part of that conversation as we know more. And then the plan gets submitted to the state, and basically what that says is, we're going to do this level of a reappraisal. We believe this will bring us to 100%, and we are looking to hire this firm and be completed within this many months. That's what the plan is. But lots of information to gather while we're developing that plan. So I'll keep you posted.
So what happens if that percentage goes down and drops below 20%? Do we then don't have to do it?
You then would not have to, technically you would not have to do it, although usually once it's over, the only way to drop that is to reappraise.
Okay.
You have to reevaluate at some point.
Right.
It's just what level of reevaluation.
What if we get one really big house?
Well, so how far behind is all the other towns? Because
Everybody at this point is averaging about 3 years.
About
So
3 years,
we
yeah.
have a fair amount of time. But again, it depends on what kind of reevaluation we need to do. If, I mean, those are towns that are having to do a full-scale reevaluation like we did in 2018.
right.
I don't think we'll have to do that. I think there's an argument for us that can be made that it's not that our data is good at this point. We know what we have for inventory. It's the housing sale price boom that is what threw everything out of whack. It's not, so our data, our grand list, not cost numbers, but our property cards, that type of stuff. Kathy has put an amazing amount of work into those. Our data is good. If our data was not good,
Right.
you know, if we had a large percentage of houses that hadn't been looked at or reappraised in years, and that's a whole nother thing.
Yep.
We don't have that.
Yep.
We just have, just sales are out of whack, that's all. So I think that the state would be hard pressed to tell us that you have to do a full-scale reevaluation at this point. It's only been 6 years. And again, our data is good. So that's the argument we will be making.
Excellent.
And we will be in touch, because Kathy's doing a lot of research and some investigation into some things, so.
Actually, we should also pay attention to the fact that residents are going to hear about this and be up in arms. So all of us need to make sure we stay informed so we can help answer questions.
Yep.
You know, I'm glad you brought that up. I was talking with my son about this today, because we were talking about reappraisals coming, things are out of whack, and he said, like everybody, does that mean my taxes are going up?
Right.
And
Not
I think it would really help if we could impress upon people that the appraised value really has nothing to do with the tax. The tax rate is factored based upon the appraised value and what we need to run the town that year.
Well, and that's the thing to remember. So in theory, all things being relative, when your grand list goes up, because your grand list is going to go up, your grand list is now,
Tax rate goes
according
down.
to the state,
But you still need the
25%
same
below.
$4 million.
You're raising the same dollars.
Right.
So if there's some way we could message that publicly, I think it would really
Yeah.
help.
That works
calm
with the
people.
town. What totally fell apart in the system was when the school system
education
started.
is-
And once education got separated from the towns, which it did, that's what makes it go bizarre. Because I remember when tax appraisals went up and your tax bill actually went down because of the
Right,
appraisal.
that's the way-
And that's
yes.
not, that doesn't happen because now the tax is on the
The
school tax.
municipal tax does,
The
but the school
municipal
tax
tax, the
doesn't.
school tax will not.
So what happened with us with education is when we got to a point where we were actually slightly over 100%, our CLA was over 100%, our education tax rate took a dive. It dropped significantly. And we said then, as our CLA drops, our education rate's going to go back up. It's the formula, don't even ask me to explain it, I couldn't even begin to. But, so there is a connection, the CLA and education rate, but it's opposite of the way the municipal rate affects the
But
grand
at the
list,
end of
yeah.
the day, there's a certain amount of money budgeted that has to be raised.
That's exactly right.
Period.
Period.
It has nothing to do with
Period.
appraised value.
Correct. When you're talking
assessed
about the
value.
municipal tax rate only,
Right.
yes, as the grand list rises, in theory, your tax rate drops because you're raising the same amount
Unless the
of
town
dollars.
needs more money, in which case, it's
And which-
just, it's a very
correct.
simple formula.
Or if you've done something significant, if in your 2018 value was 100,000 and you've added, 4 bedrooms and now it's
Right.
300,000, you're going to see a difference, right? But all things being equal, relatively speaking, you won't see that much of a shift. Correct.
So how much does the state get? I'm sure we all know that the state just raised our tax rate by 13 point something percent. So does this factor into that at all?
No.
So
No.
So your CLA does impact the education tax rate that is received by the town. So that 13 point whatever percent they approved is an average. That doesn't mean Chester's education rate is going up 13.8%. That is an average number that gets thrown into the pool of all the numbers that nobody knows where they come from for the education rate, swirled around. But your CLA is part of that. But that does not mean that Chester's education rate is going up 13.8%. That's not what that means.
But the state doesn't just take money from people for education. I mean, the state's going to pay its bills as well.
I
So
think
we
that,
have-
that was an education, not an income tax increase. That was an education tax increase, is my understanding.
Okay.
That was not income tax, that was education.
Okay.
And so Chester, we may see 13.8%. I don't know that.
Or we could see more.
Or we could see more. That is the average. I don't know how it's going to affect us until the state swirls the pot and lets us know our number. Yeah,
It probably won't
And I
be
hate to say it that way, but
13.1%. It'll be some other number.
yeah.
Right.
But your CLA does impact that. Yes.
We should know by the next select board meeting, correct? Because you would get the state number from them.
So they will not give your education rate. I just learned this yesterday.
Yep.
They will not give your education rate until the 30-day, so we voted on June 4th. There is a 30-day window in statute that gives them, anybody, 30 days to ask for a reconsideration vote. After the end of that 30 days, the state will give us our education number. So I will likely not get our education number till July 5th. I just learned that, but, yep, so the girls will be doing tax bills without me, but I will trust that they can do it.
Anything else under new business next
And
agenda?
as soon as I get it, I will let you guys know. As soon as I get the tax rate, I will let you guys know.
Question, I don't know if this fits under new business or not, but I think we all got this email this afternoon from Susan Barrett of, I don't know what, it's a vermont.gov email address, but it's about healthcare, community healthcare.
I did not get that.
I did not
Some
get that.
meetings, really?
Just for you.
Huh, how did I
I
get
think
it?
that's just for, I think that's.
It
'cause you
says,
were
"Dear
just-
Select Board members." That's why I assumed all of you got it.
I think that's because you just got elected. Is that possibly about personal health care coverage available to you for being on the select
No,
board?
this is
Okay.
about community Official schedule for our local Act 167 healthcare community meetings. You're invited to see the results of a months-long study on the critical state of hospital affordability in Vermont and to discuss options for how we need to move forward as a state. So this seems to fit, I'll forward this to all of you, it seems to fit the conversation that we had when Mike Ranzio came in and partnering with North Star Health and the hospital. And so I haven't looked, there are a whole bunch of attachments here.
Yeah, send it on over to me and
Okay.
I'll have everybody look at
And
it.
it may be something that fits in new business, and it sounds like somebody, probably not me, because I don't know that much about this stuff, should attend this
Yeah,
meeting.
yeah, I'll take a look at it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else we need to discuss before we vote to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Okay. So Ariana made the motion, and Peter, or, I'm sorry, Tim, that was you?
I beat him to it.
Okay.